The warning lights flashed red across the control panel as Jack Morrison fought to keep his scout ship steady. Space around him twisted and turned in ways that made no sense. One moment he was scanning a distant star system. The next moment something invisible grabbed his ship and pulled it sideways through reality itself. His instruments screamed warnings he had never seen before. The ship's hull groaned under pressure it was never designed to handle. Jack's hands moved fast across the controls, trying everything he knew to break free from whatever force had caught him. Nothing worked. The anomaly dragged him deeper into its grip. Then suddenly, he was falling. Real falling, not drifting through space. His ship had broken through into normal space again, but now a planet filled his viewport, and he was heading straight toward it. The ship's engines were dead. The stabilizers were offline. He had maybe 2 minutes before impact. Jack strapped himself tight into his seat and redirected all remaining power to the emergency shields. The ship hit the atmosphere like a stone thrown into water. Fire surrounded the viewport as friction turned the air around him into plasma. The whole vessel shook so hard his teeth rattled. He could smell something burning inside the cabin. The ground rushed up to meet him. Jack saw trees or things that looked like trees, except they seemed to be made of crystal or glass. He pulled hard on the manual controls, trying to level out, trying to turn his death dive into something he might survive. The ship clipped the top of the crystal forest, and pieces of his hull tore away. Then came the impact. Everything went black. When Jack opened his eyes again, pain filled every part of his body. He was still strapped in his seat, but the seat was now lying on its side. Sparks fell from broken panels above him. The viewport was cracked but not shattered. Through it, he could see crystal branches and a sky that was the wrong color, more purple than blue. He was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was alive. Jack unbuckled himself and fell to what was now the floor. His left arm hurt badly and his ribs felt wrong when he breathed, but nothing seemed broken. He grabbed the emergency kit from its locker and checked his supplies. Food for 2 weeks, water recycler still working, medical supplies, a small fabricator for basic tools, his pistol and spare charges. Most important, the emergency beacon, though its status light showed yellow instead of green. The cabin door was jammed. Jack had to kick it 3 times before it opened with a screech of bent metal. He stumbled out into the alien forest and immediately knew he was far from home. The trees around him were not trees at all, but massive formations of crystal that grew from the ground like organic structures. They hummed softly with some internal energy. The air smelled strange, sharp and clean like after a lightning storm. 3 moons hung in the sky, even though it was clearly daytime. Jack set up a basic camp near the wreck. His training took over, pushing past the pain and fear. First priority was shelter. Second was water. Third was the beacon. He needed to call for help, but the beacon's diagnostic showed damaged components. It would take time to repair, time he might not have if this world was hostile. He worked through the rest of the day, making his crash site defensible and starting repairs on the beacon. His translator unit was trying to make sense of sounds coming from the forest, but kept showing error messages. Were those animal calls or something else? Jack kept his pistol close. As the purple sky darkened toward night, Jack heard movement in the crystal trees. Something was coming closer. He raised his weapon and waited. His heart pounded in his chest. Everything in his training said to stay hidden, to avoid contact until he understood the situation. But he was injured and alone and had nowhere to run. A figure stepped out from behind a large crystal formation. Jack's breath caught in his throat. It was clearly intelligent, clearly not human, and clearly watching him with as much caution as he felt. She was tall, taller than him by half a foot, with skin that seemed to glow softly from within. Patterns like crystal veins ran along her arms and up her neck. Her eyes were large and golden, and they studied him with obvious intelligence. She held her hands out, showing she carried no weapons. Jack slowly lowered his pistol but did not put it away. They stared at each other across 10 feet of alien ground, 2 beings from different worlds, each uncertain what the other would do. The alien woman spoke. Her voice was musical, rising and falling in tones that seemed almost like singing. Jack's translator caught nothing useful, just fragments that made no sense. He tried speaking back in standard English, knowing she would not understand but hoping his tone might carry meaning. "I mean no harm. My ship crashed. I need help." She tilted her head, listening. Then she pointed at his arm, the one he was holding carefully against his ribs. She made a gesture that seemed concerned, then pointed toward the forest and made another gesture that might mean, "Follow me." Jack had to make a choice. Stay here alone, injured, with limited supplies and a broken beacon, or trust this alien stranger who might be offering help or might be leading him into a trap. He looked at her face, at those golden eyes that seemed more curious than hostile, and made his decision. He nodded and took a step toward her. She relaxed slightly, her skin shifting to a warmer color. She turned and began walking into the crystal forest, looking back to make sure he followed. Jack grabbed his emergency pack and his pistol, took one last look at his ruined ship, and walked after her into the unknown. They traveled for perhaps an hour through the strange forest. Jack's ribs hurt worse with every step, but he refused to slow down. The alien woman, he noticed, kept her pace easy and checked on him often. She led him to a cave entrance hidden behind a curtain of hanging crystal vines. Inside, the cave opened into a larger chamber lit by glowing stones placed in small niches. The woman gestured for Jack to sit on a flat rock. She pulled out a bag he had not noticed she was carrying and began removing items, containers of liquid, soft cloth, plants or plant-like things he did not recognize. She moved closer to him, slowly, watching his reaction. When Jack did not pull away, she carefully examined his injured arm. Her touch was gentle but sure. She cleaned the cuts with liquid that stung but then went numb. She wrapped his arm in cloth that felt warm and seemed to ease the pain. She offered him a container of water that his scanner said was safe to drink. Jack drank gratefully, realizing how thirsty he was. As she worked, Jack studied her. Up close, he could see the crystal patterns on her skin were not tattoos but part of her natural biology. They pulsed very slowly with soft light. Her hands were similar to human hands, but with longer fingers. She wore simple clothing that seemed to be made from woven plant fibers, dyed in deep blues and greens. When she finished treating his injuries, she sat back and spoke again. This time, Jack's translator caught a few words. Something about safe and stay and maybe hidden. He tried to respond, speaking slowly. "Thank you. I am Jack. From Earth. Far away." She listened carefully to his words, then touched her chest and said something that sounded like Lyria, a name. Jack smiled despite everything and repeated it. Lyria. She smiled back, and in that moment something changed. The fear between them did not disappear, but it lessened. They were no longer just alien and human. They were two people who had chosen to trust each other. Lyria stood and moved to the cave entrance. She made gestures that Jack understood meant he should stay here, that she would return. Then she disappeared into the crystal forest, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts and the growing realization that his simple survey mission had become something far more complicated. Days turned into weeks as Jack slowly healed in the hidden cave. Lyria visited him every day, bringing food and supplies she somehow acquired without being caught. She taught him words in her language while he taught her words in his. The translator device helped, growing smarter as it learned the patterns of Valoran's speech. Through broken conversation and many hand gestures, Jack learned about Lyria's world. The Valarans were an old race who had lived on this planet for thousands of years. They had explored the stars long before humans left Earth. Their society was built on tradition and strict social levels. Lyria was a princess, daughter of the queen who ruled their entire world. This fact shocked Jack when he finally understood it. Lyria explained that she was not supposed to be in this forest. The crystalline woods were considered dangerous and off-limits to royalty. She had snuck away from the palace because her younger brother was sick, and the royal doctors could not help him. Ancient texts spoke of a rare flower that grew only in these forbidden forests, a flower that might save his life. She had been searching for it when she found Jack instead. Jack told her about Earth and humanity's journey to the stars. He spoke of his job as a scout, searching for new worlds and new knowledge. He told her about his family back on Earth, his mother who taught school, and his father who built ships. He explained that he had always felt like he was looking for something, though he never knew what until the anomaly brought him here. As the weeks passed, their friendship deepened. Lyria's visits grew longer. Sometimes she would stay for hours, sitting with Jack as he worked on repairing his beacon with parts salvaged from the crash. She would tell him stories about palace life and the weight of expectations that came with being royal. Jack would share tales of Earth's cities and oceans and the feel of rain, which Velara Prime never experienced. One evening, nearly 2 months after the crash, Lyria arrived at the cave looking troubled. Her skin, which Jack had learned changed colors with emotion, was showing dark blues and grays. She sat down heavily on the stone where she always sat and stared at her hands. Jack put down the tools he was using and moved to sit near her. "What happened?" he asked in Valoran, his accent still rough but understandable. Lyria was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice sad. "My mother has arranged my marriage to Lord Cavan of House Theron. It is a political alliance between two powerful families. The ceremony will take place in 3 months. Jack felt something twist in his chest. Over these weeks, his feelings for Lyria had grown into something he had not expected. He cared about her in a way that went beyond friendship or gratitude for saving his life. He had been trying to ignore these feelings, telling himself they made no sense. She was an alien princess. He was a crashed human pilot. They came from different worlds in every possible way. But his heart did not care about logic. "Do you want this marriage?" Jack asked carefully. Lyria looked at him with those golden eyes that had become so familiar. "What I want has never mattered. I am a tool for my mother to use in keeping the Empire strong. It is my duty to accept." "That is wrong," Jack said firmly. "You should have a choice about who you spend your life with." "That is a human idea," Lyria replied. "Not a Velaran one." But her skin shifted to show warmer colors, and Jack realized she liked that he thought she deserved a choice. They sat in silence as the cave's glowing stones grew brighter with the coming of night. Finally, Lyria spoke again. "What is marriage like on Earth?" Jack thought about it. "It is a promise between two people who love each other. They choose to share their lives, to support each other, to be partners. Some marriages are arranged for practical reasons, but the best ones happen because two people cannot imagine being apart." "We have something similar," Lyria said softly. "It is called the binding of souls. It is very old, from before our empire existed. Two people who wish to join their lives together perform a ceremony under the moons. They exchange tokens of themselves and speak vows to the universe. Once done, the binding cannot be broken. It is more powerful than any law or royal decree." "But you cannot do this binding with the person you would choose?" Jack asked. Lyria turned to look at him fully. "The binding requires only the two people involved, no witnesses, no permission, just honest intent and willing hearts." She paused. "And I could choose anyone I wished." The meaning in her words hung in the air between them. Jack's breath caught. "Lyria, are you saying—" "I am saying that in 3 months I will be forced to join my life to someone I do not love, someone I do not even know well, all because it serves my mother's political goals." Her skin flashed with frustrated reds and oranges. "I am saying that these past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. I am saying that when I think about the future, the only face I see is yours." Jack's heart pounded. "I am human. You are Valeran. How could this possibly work?" "I do not know if it can work," Lyria admitted. "But I know that I would rather try and fail than spend my life wondering what might have been. I have learned something from you, Jack Morrison. I have learned that sometimes the greatest act of courage is choosing what your heart wants instead of what others expect." Jack stood up and walked to the cave entrance. The 3 moons were rising, painting the crystal forest in silver light. His mind raced through all the reasons this was impossible. Different species, different worlds. He was still trying to repair his beacon to call for rescue. She was a princess with duties and obligations. Logic said this could never work. But when he turned back and saw Lyria watching him with hope and fear mixed in her expression, logic did not seem important anymore. "I love you," Jack said simply. "I have been trying not to admit it, but I do. I love your kindness and your strength. I love how you make me laugh and how you listen when I talk about home. I love that you saved my life and that you trust me with your secrets." Lyria stood and came to him. She took his hands in hers. Her skin blazed with warm golds and pinks. "I love you too. I did not know humans could be so good and brave. You make me want to be braver." They stood together at the cave entrance under the 3 moons. Jack knew this moment would change everything. There would be consequences they could not predict. But right now, with Lyria's hands in his and her eyes shining with happiness, those future problems seemed distant. "Tell me about the binding," Jack said. "Tell me exactly what we would need to do." Lyria explained the ancient ceremony. It was simple but powerful. Both people must stand under open sky where they can see the stars or moons. They must each offer something of themselves. For Valerans, this meant creating a crystal shard from their own life energy, something they could only do once in their lifetime. The crystal was formed from concentrated emotion and intent, made physical through biological processes unique to their species. "But humans cannot make these crystals," Jack said, seeing the problem. "The ceremony is about the intent and the offering," Lyria explained. "You would offer something else, something that holds deep meaning for you." Jack thought about what he had. Most of his possessions were destroyed in the crash. But there was one thing he carried always. He reached under his shirt and pulled out a chain. Hanging from it was a simple gold ring, old and worn smooth. "This was my grandmother's ring. She gave it to my mother, and my mother gave it to me before I left Earth. It is the only thing I have that connects me to my family and my home." Lyria understood the significance. That would be acceptable. More than acceptable. They made their decision. 2 nights later, when all 3 moons were full and the sky was clear, they returned to the crystal forest. Lyria led Jack to a clearing where the crystal trees formed a natural circle. The moonlight reflected off the crystals, making everything glow with soft color. They stood facing each other in the center of the clearing. Lyria spoke the ancient words in a language older than her empire. Jack could not understand all of it, but the translator caught the meaning. Promises of loyalty and love, vows to stand together against whatever came, pledges to honor each other as equals and partners. When it came time for the exchange, Lyria held out her hand. Jack watched in wonder as light began to gather in her palm. It grew brighter and more solid until a small crystal formed, glowing with beautiful blue light. She placed it carefully in Jack's hand. It was warm and seemed to pulse gently. Jack took his grandmother's ring from the chain and held it out to Lyria. "This ring represents my past and my family. I give it to you as a symbol that you are now my family, my present, and my future." Lyria took the ring with reverence. She slipped it onto her finger where it fit perfectly. Then she took Jack's hand and placed her crystal in his palm. "This crystal represents my soul and my life. I give it to you as a symbol that from this moment, we are one." They spoke the final words together, a simple phrase in both their languages. "I choose you. I bind myself to you. From this night forward, we are joined." The crystal forest seemed to brighten around them. Jack felt something shift, though he could not explain what. It was as if a door had opened inside him, and through it he could sense Lyria's emotions like an echo of his own. She looked at him with wide eyes, clearly feeling the same thing. They were bound, married in the eyes of the universe and Velaran law, even if neither of them fully understood what that would mean. Jack pulled Lyria close and kissed her under the 3 moons. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the crashed ship or the broken beacon. Not the empire or the arranged marriage. Not the fact that they came from different worlds. All that mattered was this feeling of rightness, of finding the person who made you complete. The emergency beacon finally came to life 3 days after the binding ceremony. Jack had worked on it for weeks, replacing damaged circuits and rebuilding the power system from spare parts. When it began transmitting its distress signal, he felt relief and sadness mixed together. Relief because he would finally be rescued. Sadness because rescue meant leaving Lyria. They had talked about what would happen when his people came. Jack would need to return to the human fleet and file his report. His discovery of an intelligent alien species would be huge news. Diplomatic teams would want to make formal contact. Jack promised to volunteer as the main human representative, using his relationship with Lyria to help both species understand each other. Lyria would stay on Velara Prime and prepare her family for the truth. She would tell them about Jack and about the binding, though both of them worried about how her mother would react. They made plans to reunite as soon as possible, to face whatever challenges came together. 5 days after the beacon activated, a human rescue ship arrived in orbit. Jack said goodbye to Lyria in the Crystal Forest where they had first performed their ceremony. They held each other for a long time, neither wanting to let go. "I will come back," Jack promised. "As soon as I can arrange it, I will return." "I will be waiting," Lyria said. "And I will make my mother understand. Somehow." They parted with one final kiss. Jack watched Lyria disappear into the forest before he activated his emergency communicator and contacted the rescue ship. Within an hour, a shuttle landed near his crashed scout vessel. The recovery team was professional and efficient. They asked few questions during the flight back to the main ship, though Jack caught them staring at the blue crystal he wore on a chain around his neck. The captain of the rescue vessel, a stern woman named Helen Parker, debriefed Jack in her office. He filed an official report about the spatial anomaly, the crash, and his survival on Velara Prime. He described meeting an intelligent alien species and learning about their civilization. He mentioned that one individual had helped him survive and that he believed diplomatic contact would be welcomed. What Jack did not mention was his relationship with Lyria. He did not speak of the binding ceremony or his marriage to an alien princess. He told himself he would reveal everything once they reached the main fleet and he could speak with diplomatic officials. He needed to handle this carefully to protect both Lyria and the chance for peaceful contact between their species. The rescue ship traveled for 2 weeks before reaching the human fleet stationed at the edge of explored space. During that time, Jack spent hours reviewing what he knew about Velaran culture and practicing his language skills. He wrote detailed notes about everything Lyria had taught him, preparing to serve as a bridge between their worlds. When they finally docked with the fleet's command carrier, Jack was immediately summoned to meet with Admiral Lisa Grant, the officer in charge of the Exploration Division. He entered her office with his formal report ready and his determination set. This was his chance to start the process of bringing humans and Valerons together. Admiral Grant was a sharp woman in her 50s who had spent 30 years in space. She read Jack's report with intense focus, asking pointed questions about Velaran technology, military capability, and social structure. Jack answered everything honestly, emphasizing that the Velarans seemed peaceful and that one of them had saved his life. "This is extraordinary," the Admiral said when she finished reading. "First contact with a spacefaring civilization is exactly what this mission was hoping to find. I am assigning you to the diplomatic team that will make official contact. Your experience with these Velarans makes you invaluable." Jack felt a surge of hope. This was exactly what he needed. "Thank you, Admiral. I believe I can help establish good relations between our species." "There is one thing that concerns me," Admiral Grant said, her eyes sharp. "Your report mentions one specific Velaran who helped you extensively. You spent nearly 3 months in close contact with this individual. Did any situation arise that might complicate diplomatic relations?" Jack hesitated. He should tell her everything now, but something made him hold back. He needed to coordinate with Lyria first to make sure they presented their situation correctly. "No complications, Admiral. She was extremely helpful and showed genuine interest in learning about humanity." The Admiral studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "Very well. The diplomatic team will be ready to depart in 1 week. Use that time to prepare your materials and brief the team on Velaran customs." Back on Velara Prime, Lyria returned to the palace to find her world in chaos. Her younger brother's illness had worsened in her absence. The royal doctors were desperate, having tried every treatment they knew. Her mother, Queen Theraxia, had been frantic, sending search parties throughout the Empire looking for her missing daughter. Lyria went directly to her mother's private chambers. The queen was an imposing woman whose skin showed deep purples and golds that marked her status and power. When Lyria entered, her mother's colors flashed through anger, relief, and back to anger. "Where have you been?" Queen Theraxia demanded. "Do you have any idea what your disappearance has caused? Lord Kavan's family is insulted. The court has been full of rumors. I have had to deal with a political disaster while worrying that you were dead." "I am sorry, Mother," Lyria said calmly. "I was searching for the healing flower that the ancient texts mention. The one that might save my brother." The queen's anger faltered slightly. "You went to the Forbidden Forest? Alone? That was incredibly foolish and dangerous." "I know. But I found something there. Something that might change everything for our empire." Lyria took a deep breath. "I found an alien, a human from a species called humanity. His ship crashed in the forest. I helped him survive." Queen Theraxia stared at her daughter in shock. "An alien? Here? On our world? Without any authorization or diplomatic contact? This is a serious security breach. Where is this creature now?" "He left. His people came and rescued him. But, Mother, he was not dangerous. He was kind and intelligent. I learned their language and taught him ours. I learned about his species and their civilization. They are explorers like we once were, reaching out to understand the universe." The queen paced her chamber, her skin flickering through several colors as she processed this information. "You should have reported this immediately. The council needs to know. We must assess the threat level and prepare our defenses." "They are not a threat," Lyria insisted. "Mother, I spent months with this human. I know him well. His people want peaceful contact." Something in Lyria's tone made the queen stop and look at her daughter more carefully. "How well do you know him?" Lyria hesitated. She had planned to reveal the truth gradually, to prepare her mother slowly. But the direct question demanded an honest answer. "Very well, Mother. He is a good person. He saved my life when I was injured searching for the flower. We became friends." Queen Theraxia's eyes narrowed. "Friends? You speak of this alien with great feeling. Is there something more you are not telling me?" Before Lyria could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. The Queen's personal guard rushed into the chamber. "Your Majesty, the planetary monitoring system has detected an anomaly, a recorded binding ceremony involving a member of the royal family. The palace artificers are investigating now." The Queen's skin went completely white, a sign of extreme shock. She looked at Lyria with dawning horror. "No. Tell me you did not do what I think you did." Lyria lifted her chin, trying to show confidence she did not feel. "I performed a binding ceremony. It is my right under ancient law. With an alien, with a creature we know nothing about, without permission or consideration of the consequences?" The Queen's voice rose with each question. "Do you understand what you have done? The binding is sacred. It cannot be undone. You are legally and spiritually joined to this human now. The marriage contract with Lord Kavan is void. The political alliance I have been building for years is destroyed." "I love him, Mother," Lyria said simply. "I chose him freely. That is what the binding is supposed to be about. Not political advantage or family alliances, love and free choice." Queen Theraxia looked at her daughter as if seeing a stranger. "Love? You bound yourself eternally to an alien based on love. You are a princess of the Velaran Empire. Your personal feelings are secondary to your duty to your people." "Jack is his name," Lyria said quietly. "And he is a good man who treats me as an equal, not as a political tool. He believes I should have choices about my own life." "These are human ideas poisoning your mind," the Queen snapped. "I need to think. You are confined to your chambers until I decide what to do about this disaster you have created." Guards escorted Lyria from the Queen's chambers. As she walked through the palace halls, she saw nobles and servants whispering, their skin colors showing shock and excitement. The news was already spreading. The princess had bound herself to an unknown alien. The scandal would dominate court politics for months. In her room, Lyria sat by her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Jack was preparing to return. She hoped he was ready for the storm that awaited him. Queen Theraxia called an emergency council meeting. Her top advisors gathered in the war room, their expressions grave. The Queen explained the situation in blunt terms. Her daughter had performed a binding with an alien human. The ceremony was legally valid, which meant it could not be simply dismissed or ignored. "This is unprecedented," said the High Artificer, an old Velaran whose skin was marked with the silver patterns of extreme age. "The binding laws were written thousands of years ago. They contain no provisions for unions with alien species. Technically, the ceremony is valid if both parties gave genuine consent." "What about the security implications?" asked the military commander. "We know nothing about these humans. What if this was a deliberate infiltration? What if they planned this to gain access to our royal family?" "That is my concern as well," the Queen admitted. "It seems too convenient that this human crashed exactly where my daughter was searching, that they spent months together, that he somehow convinced her to bind herself to him." "We should capture him when he returns," the military commander suggested. "Interrogate him. Find out if this is part of a larger plan." "We cannot," the High Artificer said. "If the binding is valid, he is legally part of the royal family now. Harming him would violate sacred law. The people would never accept it." Queen Theraxia felt trapped. Her daughter had put her in an impossible situation. She could not undo the binding. She could not harm the human without violating laws that even she must obey. But she also could not simply accept an alien into the royal family without understanding his motives and the implications for her empire. An idea formed in her mind, a way to test this human and discover his true intentions. "When the humans make contact, we will invite them for a diplomatic meeting. I will personally evaluate this Jack Morrison. If he truly loves my daughter, if he is not using her for some hidden purpose, he will have a chance to prove it." but if I suspect any deception or manipulation, I will find a way to remove him from her life, sacred law or not. The Council agreed to this approach. Messages were sent to the planetary defenses to watch for approaching human ships. When they arrived, they would be allowed to enter but would be carefully monitored. 1 week later, human vessels appeared in orbit around Velara Prime. They broadcast messages of peaceful intent and requested formal diplomatic contact. Queen Theraxia responded with an invitation to the palace for an official first contact ceremony. On the human command ship, Ambassador Claire Henderson reviewed the invitation with her team. "This is excellent news. They are willing to meet with us right away. Jack, you will be part of the delegation. Your prior contact with them should help ease any tension." Jack nodded, his stomach tight with nervousness. He would see Lyria again soon. But he would also face her mother, a queen who now knew about their secret marriage. He had no idea how she would react, but he was certain it would not be pleasant. The human shuttle descended through Velara Prime's purple sky toward the royal palace. Jack sat with the diplomatic team, wearing his formal uniform and trying to control his nerves. Ambassador Claire Henderson reviewed their approach one more time, emphasizing the importance of making a good first impression. She had no idea that Jack had already made a very significant impression on one member of the royal family. Jack still had not told anyone about his marriage to Lyria. He kept telling himself he would explain after the initial meeting went well, after they established basic diplomatic relations, after things were stable enough that the truth would not destroy everything. Deep down, he knew he was being a coward, but he could not find the right moment to speak. The palace was massive, built from the same crystal materials as the forest, but shaped and grown into towers and walls that gleamed in the light of the 3 moons. The shuttle landed in a courtyard where Velaran guards stood at attention, their skin showing formal patterns of gray and blue. They escorted the human delegation inside without speaking. The throne room took Jack's breath away. It was enormous, with walls that seemed to be alive with slowly moving colors. Hundreds of Velaran nobles filled the space, all watching the humans with expressions of curiosity and suspicion. Their skin colors flickered constantly as they whispered to each other, creating a living light show throughout the hall. At the far end of the room sat Queen Theraxia on a throne that looked like it had been grown rather than built. She was exactly as Lyria had described her. Tall, powerful, radiating authority. Her skin showed deep purple and gold patterns that marked her as royalty. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, and they fixed on the human delegation with an intensity that made Jack want to step back. Standing to the side of the throne, Jack saw Lyria. His heart jumped at the sight of her. She looked beautiful in formal robes that matched the court setting, but her skin colors were muted, showing stress and unhappiness. When her eyes met his across the room, he saw both relief and fear in her expression. Ambassador Henderson stepped forward and began the formal greeting she had prepared. She spoke about humanity's desire for peaceful relations and mutual understanding. She emphasized that humans came with open hands and open minds, hoping to learn from the wisdom of Velaran civilization. Her speech was diplomatic and well-rehearsed. Queen Theraxia listened in complete silence. Her skin colors did not change. Her expression revealed nothing. When the ambassador finished, the queen did not respond to anything she had said. Instead, she stood from her throne in one smooth motion that made the entire room go quiet. "I care nothing for your diplomatic words," the queen said, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "I care only about the truth of what has happened between your people and mine. Specifically, I care about what happened between one of your people and my daughter." Ambassador Henderson looked confused. "Your Majesty, I am not aware of any incidents between our species. Captain Morrison filed a report about peaceful contact with your people after his crash. If there was some misunderstanding, I am certain we can resolve it." Misunderstanding. The Queen's skin flashed red with anger. Is it a misunderstanding when one of your people infiltrates my world, manipulates my daughter, and tricks her into a sacred binding ceremony? Is it a misunderstanding when this same person hides the truth from his own superiors? All eyes in the room turned to Jack. The other members of the diplomatic team stared at him with shock and confusion. Ambassador Henderson's expression went from confused to furious in an instant. "Captain Morrison, what is she talking about?" the ambassador demanded. Jack stepped forward, his face burning. There was no hiding now. No more delays or excuses. "Ambassador, I apologize. I should have included certain details in my report. During my time on Velara Prime, Princess Lyria and I developed a relationship. We performed a Velaran ceremony called the Binding. According to their laws, this ceremony is equivalent to marriage." The throne room erupted in noise. The human team was shouting questions at Jack. The Velaran nobles were talking loudly, their skin colors flashing through every shade. Ambassador Henderson looked like she wanted to strangle Jack. Only Queen Theraxia remained silent and still, watching everything with cold calculation. "Silence," the Queen commanded. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone went quiet. "I will hear the human speak. Let him explain himself before I decide his fate." Jack felt every eye in the room on him. His military career was probably over. The diplomatic mission was in ruins, but none of that mattered as much as the truth. He looked at Lyria, saw the fear in her eyes, and found his courage. "Your Majesty, I did not infiltrate your world. My crash was an accident. I did not trick your daughter. Everything between us happened naturally. Yes, I fell in love with her. Yes, we performed the binding ceremony. But I did not do these things with any ulterior motive or hidden agenda. I did them because Lyria is the most incredible person I have ever met, and I cannot imagine my life without her." "Love?" The Queen said the word like it was poison. "You expect me to believe that love motivated you to bind yourself to an alien princess? You expect me to believe this was not a calculated move to gain access to our empire through my daughter?" "Yes, because it is the truth," Jack said firmly. "I know how it looks. I know it seems impossible that a human and a Velaran could form such a connection so quickly. But we did. We talked for hours every day. We learned each other's languages and cultures. We shared our hopes and fears. And somewhere in all of that, friendship became something more." "He is telling the truth, Mother," Lyria said, stepping forward despite the guards who moved to stop her. "I chose Jack freely. He did not manipulate or trick me. I bound myself to him because I love him and because he respects me in a way that no one else ever has. He treats me like a person, not a political tool." Queen Theraxia's skin flashed dark red. "You are a princess of the Velaran Empire. You have responsibilities that go beyond your personal desires. Your binding to this human has destroyed important political alliances and created chaos in our court." "Then perhaps those alliances were wrong to begin with," Lyria shot back. "Perhaps forcing people into marriages they do not want for political convenience is wrong. Perhaps I am tired of being treated like property to be traded for your political goals." The Queen looked like she had been slapped. For a moment, her iron control wavered, and Jack saw the hurt beneath her anger. She was not just a queen worried about political problems. She was a mother who felt betrayed by her daughter. "You know nothing of leadership," the Queen said quietly. "You do not understand the hard choices that must be made to keep an empire safe and stable. Your actions have consequences that go far beyond your personal happiness." "I know that," Lyria said, her voice breaking slightly. "But I also know that you cannot control everything. You cannot protect me from every danger or plan every detail of my life. At some point, you have to trust me to make my own choices, even if they are not the choices you would make." Queen Theraxia turned back to Jack. "And you, human, You claim to love my daughter, yet you hid the truth from your own people. You did not have the courage to stand by your choice until I forced your hand. That does not speak of honor or genuine feeling." Jack felt the accusation hit home because it was true. "You are right, Your Majesty. I was a coward. I should have told my superiors immediately. I was afraid of exactly this, of causing a diplomatic disaster, of having my relationship with Lyria become a political problem. I thought if I waited, if I prepared the ground carefully, I could find a way to make everyone understand. But all I did was make things worse." "At least you admit your failings," the Queen said. "That is something. But admission is not enough. You have created a situation that threatens the stability of my empire and the safety of my daughter. I cannot simply accept this and move on." "Then test me," Jack said suddenly. "In your culture, you must have some way to prove worth or intent. Give me a chance to show you that I am sincere. Let me demonstrate that I am willing to do whatever it takes to protect Lyria and honor our bond." The Queen's eyes narrowed with interest. She had not expected the human to challenge her this way. "You would submit to our traditions? To trials that were designed for Valerans and may kill a weaker human?" "Yes," Jack said without hesitation. "I would do anything to prove myself to you, not because I need your approval, but because you are Lyria's mother, and she loves you despite everything. If there is any chance of making this work, of bringing our peoples together instead of driving them apart, then I have to try." Queen Theraxia was silent for a long moment, considering. The entire throne room waited for her decision. Finally, she spoke. "Very well. You will undergo the trials of worth. 3 tests that have been used for generations to evaluate those who seek to join the royal family through marriage. They will test your courage, your wisdom, and your commitment. If you pass all 3, I will accept your bond with my daughter and work toward peaceful relations with your people. If you fail, the bond will be considered void, and you will leave this world forever." "That is not fair," Lyria protested. "The trials are dangerous even for Valarans. Jack is not built for them." "You are setting him up to fail." "Then he should refuse," the Queen said simply. "If his love is not strong enough to risk everything, then it is not real love." Jack looked at Lyria, seeing the fear in her face. Then he looked back at the Queen. "I accept your terms. When do the trials begin?" "Tomorrow at dawn," Queen Theraxia said. "That gives you tonight to prepare, and say whatever goodbyes you feel necessary. I suggest you use the time well." The Queen gestured and guards surrounded Jack, separating him from the rest of the human delegation. Ambassador Henderson tried to protest, but the Queen cut her off. "The human agreed to face our traditions. If you interfere, I will consider it an act of hostility and expel your entire delegation from our world. The choice is yours." The ambassador looked at Jack with anger and disappointment, but she did not argue further. The human team was escorted out of the throne room, leaving Jack alone with the Valaran guards. They took him to a chamber in the palace, a room that was comfortable but clearly a cell. An hour later, Lyria came to see him. The guards allowed her entry but remained posted outside the door. She ran to Jack and he held her tightly. "I am sorry," she whispered. "This is my fault. I should have prepared my mother better. I should have found a way to make her understand before you arrived." "This is not your fault," Jack said firmly. "We both knew there would be consequences. We just did not expect them so soon. But I meant what I said. I will face these trials, and I will pass them. For you. For us. The trials are not just difficult. They are deadly," Lyria said, pulling back to look at him. "The test of courage involves the labyrinth of echoes, a place where people have died from the creatures and psychological torments within. The test of wisdom requires solving puzzles based on Valaran history and culture that you barely know. The test of sacrifice. I do not even want to think about what my mother will require for that." "Then help me prepare," Jack said. "You know these trials. Tell me everything you know about them. Give me every advantage you can." They spent the night talking. Lyria described the trials in as much detail as she could remember from ancient stories and court records. She taught Jack more about Valoran philosophy and history. She explained how her people thought and what they valued. Jack listened carefully, filing away every piece of information that might help him survive what was coming. As dawn approached and Lyria had to leave, they held each other one more time. "If something goes wrong," Jack began. "Nothing will go wrong," Lyria interrupted. "You are going to pass these trials and prove to my mother that love between our species is not only possible but beautiful. You are going to show her that differences make us stronger, not weaker." Jack kissed her, trying to pour all his feelings into that moment. Then she was gone, and he was alone with his thoughts and fears as the first light of dawn began to filter through his window. Dawn broke over the Crystal Palace with colors that Earth had never seen. Jack was brought from his chamber to a courtyard where Queen Theraxia waited with her court. Lyria stood near her mother, her skin showing pale colors of worry. The human delegation was also present, kept at a distance by guards, but allowed to witness what would happen. "The first trial begins now," the Queen announced to everyone assembled. "Captain Jack Morrison will enter the labyrinth of echoes and find his way to the center, where he will retrieve the marker stone. The labyrinth contains many dangers, both physical and mental. Most who enter do not return. Those who do are forever changed by what they see within." Jack was given basic supplies: a light source, a container of water, a simple knife. No weapons beyond that. No communication devices. No help of any kind. Two guards opened a massive door in the courtyard wall, revealing darkness beyond. Jack looked back at Lyria one last time, then stepped into the shadows. The door closed behind him with a sound like thunder. The labyrinth of echoes was unlike anything Jack had experienced. The walls were made of the same crystal as the forests, but here they twisted and changed, creating passages that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. The air was thick and heavy, making each breath an effort. Strange sounds echoed from every direction, voices and music and screams that might be real or might be his imagination. Jack moved carefully, mapping his path in his mind. The labyrinth tried to confuse him with identical passages and dead ends, but his training as a pilot had taught him spatial reasoning and navigation. He marked his turns with small scratches on the crystal walls, creating a trail he could follow if needed. The first creature attacked after he had been walking for an hour. It came from the shadows, something with too many legs and crystalline teeth. Jack dodged its first strike and drove his knife into what he hoped was a vital area. The creature shrieked and dissolved into mist. He realized these were not real animals but constructs, created by the labyrinth to test intruders. More creatures came as he went deeper. Jack fought them with tactics he had learned in military training, using speed and strategy rather than brute strength. He was smaller than a Valoran and not as physically powerful, but he could think fast and adapt. Each victory gave him confidence, though he knew the real test was still ahead. After several hours, the labyrinth changed its approach. The physical threat stopped, but something else began. Jack started hearing voices. His mother's voice calling him home, his father telling him he had failed, his own voice whispering that he was not good enough, that he would die here, that he had thrown away everything for an impossible dream. The echoes were psychological weapons designed to break the spirit. They found every doubt and fear and amplified them until they seemed overwhelming. Jack felt despair creeping into his mind. Maybe the voices were right. Maybe this was hopeless. Maybe he should just give up. Then he thought about Lyria, about her courage in choosing him despite everything she risked, about her belief that he could succeed. If she could be brave enough to defy an empire, he could be brave enough to face his own fears. "You are not real," Jack said out loud to the voices. "You are just tricks. My doubt's trying to defeat me, but I have something stronger than doubt. I have a reason to keep going." The voices grew louder, more insistent, but Jack pushed forward. He focused on his goal and on his love for Lyria. Gradually, the voices faded. The labyrinth seemed to realize it could not break him this way. Finally, after what felt like days but was probably only 8 hours, Jack reached the center. There, on a pedestal of crystal, sat a small stone that glowed with internal light, the marker stone. He grabbed it, and the labyrinth began to shift. Passages opened, creating a clear path back to the entrance. Jack ran, clutching the stone, following the opening path until he burst out into sunlight. The court had been waiting. When Jack emerged, dirty and exhausted but alive, a murmur of surprise went through the crowd. Queen Theraxia's skin showed colors of grudging respect. Lyria looked like she wanted to run to him, but forced herself to stay still. "You have passed the first trial," the queen said. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow you face the test of wisdom." That evening, Jack was allowed to bathe and eat a real meal. Lyria came to see him again, relief obvious in every movement. "No human has ever passed the labyrinth before. No one has even tried. You did something incredible." "One down, 2 to go," Jack said, trying to sound confident. "What can you tell me about the test of wisdom?" The next morning, Jack was brought to a chamber filled with Velaran scholars and artificers. In the center of the room stood a massive puzzle, a 3-dimensional construction of crystal and light that shifted and changed. Mathematical equations in Velaran symbols covered the walls. Historical texts were scattered on tables. "This puzzle has been used to test royal candidates for 500 years, the High Artificer explained. "It combines mathematics, history, philosophy, and physics. You must solve it completely to pass. You have until sunset. If you fail, the test is over." Jack stared at the puzzle, feeling overwhelmed. The mathematics were complex and used systems he barely understood. The historical references were to events he had never studied. Everything was designed for someone raised in Velaran culture, someone who had spent years learning these exact subjects. He wanted to panic. Instead, he forced himself to breathe and think. Lyria had told him about Velaran philosophy during their nights in the cave. She had explained how her people viewed the universe as interconnected, how they believed that all knowledge was related, how they looked for patterns in everything. Jack stopped trying to solve the puzzle like a human and started trying to think like a Velaran. He looked for connections between the mathematics and the history. He searched for philosophical concepts that might link different parts of the problem. When he found an equation he could not solve directly, he looked for it in the historical texts, finding stories where those same numbers appeared in different contexts. Hours passed. Jack worked steadily, sometimes making progress, sometimes hitting dead ends. The scholars watched with interest, discussing his methods in low voices. His approach was different from how a Velaran would solve the puzzle, but it was not wrong. It was just unusual. As the sun began to set, Jack made a final connection. He adjusted the last piece of the crystal puzzle and stepped back. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire construction lit up, glowing with harmonious light that filled the chamber. The puzzle was solved. The scholars burst into applause. Even the High Artificer looked impressed. "Remarkable. You solved it using methods I have never seen before. Your human perspective allowed you to see connections that a Velaran might have missed. You have passed the second trial." That night, Jack collapsed in exhaustion. Lyria visited him, and they held each other in silence. 2 trials done, 1 more to go. But the test of sacrifice was the most dangerous because no one knew what it would involve. It changed for each person based on what they valued most. The third morning, Jack was brought before Queen Theraxia in a private chamber. Only the Queen, Lyria, and a few high-ranking officials were present. The Queen studied Jack for a long moment before speaking. "The final test is simple in concept, but difficult in execution. I will give you a choice. You may return to your ship and leave this world forever. Your honor will be intact. The diplomatic mission will continue without incident. Your career will be saved. You will face no punishment for what has happened. All I ask is that you go and never return." "And the alternative?" Jack asked, though he already knew. "You stay here permanently. You give up your connection to humanity, your career, your family, everything you have ever known. You become Valoran in all but biology. You will never see Earth again. Never speak to your parents again. Never return to the life you had. This is the price of joining the royal family. Complete commitment. No divided loyalties." Lyria gasped. "Mother, that is too much. You cannot ask him to give up everything." "I can and I am," the Queen said firmly. "This is what our laws require. If he truly loves you, he will make the sacrifice. If his love is not strong enough, then it is better to end this now before more damage is done." Jack felt the weight of the choice crushing down on him. Give up Earth. Give up his family. Give up everything he had been. The logical part of his mind screamed that this was insane. He had known Lyria for only a few months. How could he throw away his entire life for her? But then he looked at Lyria and saw the tears in her eyes. He thought about the time they had spent together, the conversations, the laughter, the way she made him feel like he finally belonged somewhere. He thought about what it would mean to walk away from her, to return to Earth and spend the rest of his life wondering what might have been. "Before I answer," Jack said slowly, "I want to ask you something, Your Majesty. Why are you really doing this? Is it truly about ancient laws and tradition? Or is it about something else?" The Queen's skin flashed with anger. "You dare question my motives?" "I dare because I think I understand now," Jack continued. "You are not just testing me. You are testing yourself. You are asking if you can trust me with your daughter, if you can accept change and new possibilities, if you can let go of control long enough to let Lyria make her own choices." Queen Thracia was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, her colors softened. "Perhaps you are wiser than I gave you credit for. Yes, this is about trust. Trust that you will protect my daughter. Trust that this union will not destroy my family or my empire. Trust that love between species is possible. I have lived a long time, human. I have seen many things, but I have never seen anything like this situation. It terrifies me." "It terrifies me too," Jack admitted. "But Lyria taught me something important. She taught me that sometimes the scariest choice is the right choice. That sometimes you have to risk everything for what matters most." He turned to Lyria. "I cannot give up my entire human identity. That would not be fair to me or to you. But I can promise that wherever you are, that is where I want to be. If staying here means I see my parents less often, then I will find a way to make that work. If it means changing careers, I will adapt. But I refuse to believe that loving you means I have to destroy who I am." "That is not the choice I offered," the Queen said. "Then change the choice." Lyria spoke up, her voice strong. "Mother, you have the power to modify these ancient laws. You have done it before when circumstances required it. The universe is bigger than our traditions anticipated. Jack is right. Love should not require the destruction of identity. It should be about joining two lives while respecting what makes each person unique. If I do this, if I change laws that have stood for thousands of years, what does that say to our people?" the Queen asked. "It says that wisdom knows when to evolve," Jack answered. "It says that you are strong enough to adapt when faced with new realities. It says that the Valaran Empire is not rigid and dying, but flexible and alive." Queen Thracia looked between Jack and her daughter. Her skin showed colors that flickered between many emotions. Finally, she sighed deeply. "You both make compelling arguments. Very well. I will not force you to choose between your identity and your love. But understand this, Jack Morrison. If I agree to this, If I recognize your bond and modify our laws, you and Lyria will have responsibilities. You will serve as bridge between our peoples. Your marriage will not be private but public, a symbol of what humans and Velarans can achieve together. We accept, both Jack and Lyria said at the same time. The Queen approached Jack. She reached out and touched her forehead to his in the traditional Velaran gesture of family acceptance. Welcome to House Theraxia, son. Try not to cause too many more diplomatic disasters. Jack felt tears in his eyes. Thank you, Your Majesty. I promise to spend my life honoring the trust you have placed in me. Later that day, a formal ceremony was held in the throne room. Both Velaran nobles and human diplomats were present. Queen Theraxia announced that she was officially recognizing the binding between her daughter and Jack Morrison. She declared that their union would serve as the foundation for a new alliance between their species. Ambassador Henderson, who had spent the past days in angry disbelief, finally began to see the bigger picture. A personal relationship between a human and a Velaran princess could open doors that traditional diplomacy never could. She approached Jack after the ceremony. I am still furious with you for not telling me the truth from the beginning, she said. But I have to admit, you may have accomplished more for human-Velaran relations by accident than I could have achieved through years of careful negotiation. I hope so, Jack said, because I really do not want to have gone through all of this for nothing. In the days that followed, the real work began. Jack and Lyria met with representatives from both species, helping them understand each other. Jack explained human customs and thinking to Velaran officials. Lyria taught human diplomats about her people's culture and values. Slowly, carefully, the framework for cooperation began to take shape. One evening, as Jack and Lyria stood together on a palace balcony watching both human ships in orbit and the crystal forests below, Queen Theraxia found them. She had one more thing to say. My youngest son has been responding well to treatment, the Queen said quietly. The human doctors brought medical techniques we had never considered. When combined with our own healing methods, they are proving effective. He may fully recover. That is wonderful news, Jack said sincerely. It is also proof, the Queen continued. Proof that my daughter was right, that you were right, that different perspectives and methods, when combined, can achieve things neither could accomplish alone. I was wrong to resist so strongly. Fear made me blind to possibilities. You were protecting your family and your people, Lyria said gently. That is what a good leader does. A good leader also knows when to stop protecting and start trusting, the Queen replied. She looked at Jack. I initially saw you as a threat. Now I see you as the son I never had. Take care of my daughter, Jack Morrison. Help her change this empire for the better. I will, Jack promised. We will do it together. Queen Theraxia nodded and left them alone. Jack and Lyria held hands, looking out at the stars that connected their two worlds. Their journey was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, misunderstandings to work through, cultural differences to navigate. But they had something powerful on their side. They had love that had already survived impossible odds. They had trust that had been tested and proven strong. They had hope that differences could be bridges rather than walls. What are you thinking? Lyria asked. Jack smiled. I am thinking that crashing on this planet was the best accident that ever happened to me. I am thinking that I cannot wait to see what we build together. I am thinking that maybe the universe knew what it was doing when it brought us together. The universe is wise that way, Lyria agreed. She leaned against him, her skin glowing with happy colors. I love you, Jack Morrison. I love you too, Lyria, Jack replied. My wife, my partner, my future. They stood together as the three moons rose, painting the sky in colors that Earth and Velara Prime both contributed to. Two people from different worlds, joined by choice and strengthened by challenge. Their story would be told for generations, a tale of how love and courage could overcome any obstacle, how understanding could bridge any gap, and how humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or technology, but in the simple, powerful ability to see beyond differences and connect with another soul. The future stretched before them, uncertain but bright. Together, they would face it. Together, they would show both their peoples what was possible when hearts remained open and minds remained willing to grow. Together, they would prove that the universe was not divided by species or worlds, but united by the fundamental truth that all beings, regardless of origin, shared the same capacity for love, hope, and change. And somewhere in orbit, looking down at the planet where his son had found an impossible love, Jack's father received a message. His son was safe. His son was happy. His son had done something extraordinary. The message ended with a simple line that made the old man smile through tears. "I have found my home, Dad, not in a place but in a person, and I cannot wait for you to meet her."